Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for November 18th. Clerk Boak, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Spatafor.
Present.
Councilmember Hussein.
Here.
Councilmember Carter.
Here.
Councilmember Pelli-Vanoglu.
Present.
Councilmember Brown.
Present.
Councilmember Cost.
Here.
Councilmember Garza.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson. 8 members present.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we have the minutes of the October 28th meeting. Vice President Hussein.
I would move the meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, we have a proper motion in place. Any additional comments from council? Seeing none, all those in favor, please state by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. All right, at this time, we are to public comment on agenda items. If there's anybody from the public that would like to come down and address council, you'll have up to 3 minutes, and please state your name for the record. All right, seeing no in-person public comment, do we have any online? No online public comment? Okay, moving down the agenda. We are to discussion action item B, a resolution, principal to shopping district special assessment role. My understanding is we have our assessor here, Jennifer Seisberger. Please come down to the well. Appreciate you being here. Make sure the green light is on.
Thank you. Good evening, council.
Good evening. If you could just go over the what we're going to be looking at tonight, this action item, and then we'll open it up for questions.
We are looking at the 2024 assessment roll for the principal shopping district, and that has a 3% increase for the year of 2024, from 23 to 24.
Okay. Do we have any questions from council on this? Peter Spatafor, Councilman Spatafor.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here tonight. You said 23 to 24. Just for clarification, we were late on assessing 23's increase, or 24's increase, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so this is 24 and 25?
No, we are just doing 24.
Okay.
I believe we have, the resolution addresses the increase for 25 through 28,
Okay,
so that's why they are listed.
got it, okay.
Vice President Hussein.
So there's a little bit of confusion. We have a couple different memos from different people speaking to the percentage increases, and one of the memos that we have discusses a 2023 resolution that included catch-up increases of 5%. So it is not 5%.
That's correct.
It is 3%.
That was my misunderstanding. I apologize for
Not a problem. I just wanted to make sure that when we move this later, we know exactly what we're doing. Okay,
Only
so
3%.
3%. Okay, so
It's
we're
not often an
approving the
assessor can
assessment roll
lower
for
the assessment.
2024, which we'll see a 3% increase, and then 25, 26, 27, 28, we're approving 3% increase. Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank you, Vice President. Councilman Pelli-Vanoglu.
Thank you. I do have one question. I had heard from a business owner in the downtown area that questioned why, depending on the type of business, you were either assessed or not assessed. For instance, private business versus a nonprofit organization. Could you explain a little bit, just so we can address that publicly, why it is assessed to private business owners and not necessarily nonprofit organizations and so on?
The nonprofits should have an assessment. I believe it is a reduced rate. I want to say they pay 75% of the rate, while city government, in other words, tax-funded governments, are not assessed at all in that district. Just the businesses, and then the nonprofits would be reduced rate.
Thank you.
Vice President Hussein.
And is that driven by state statute, I would assume?
That was in the resolution. I'm not familiar with how it states in the statute at this time, but I can find that out if you're interested.
And then the other thing is, I know the answer, but I think, just for the record, so the principal shopping district includes zones A, B, and C. One of those zones actually has a north and a south piece. And they are assessed at different rates. Can you talk about Zone A and the added benefit, essentially, that those property owners are receiving, why they pay more?
Well, Zone A is in the heart of that central business district and has the biggest benefit. They have, most of the events and things are driven right in that area. The other zones are kind of supportive of that area and don't see as much of a direct benefit of the assessment.
Thank you. And I have one question as well. There was a piece of correspondence that we received as council regarding a business being a wholesaler and not a retail. Do they still get charged the same assessment as what a retail would is?
There are different rates for industrial, because that would be considered an industrial rate. And that is significantly lower than what the main rate would be for the first floor, regular business.
Thank you. Councilman Spatafor?
Councilmember Hussein, to your question about statute, and to the assessor, if you look at the exempt code, 211.7M, 211.7Z, and so on and so forth, those are the citations for tax exempt status in state law, so those are statutorily exempt.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any more comments or questions from council? Seeing no further questions or comments, I appreciate you being here this evening. We will take action on this later this evening.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Okay, Vice President Hussein.
Yep, I would move the resolution.
Okay, we have a proper motion in place. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please state by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. All right, moving down to Resolution C, a ballot proposal, Parks and Recreation millage renewal. Director Brett Kaczynski. Appreciate you being here this evening. Thanks for the call. Gonna go over this briefly and then open it up for any questions from council.
Sure. The Lansing Parks millage has been around since 1990, and we are looking for a renewal of that. This would be on the August of 2025 for renewal. This would be a 1 mil millage, and again, a renewal for that. This goes for a number of areas of our Parks and Recreation system, not only for our summer playground camps, but also for maintenance of our park system. We also use this for our cemeteries, for our golf, and this comes before you every year also in the form of the budget. So you see how we are looking to spend that each year. And so each year that would come to you as far as how exactly we plan to spend those parks millage dollars. But before you tonight, this is just to put that on the ballot for the August election cycle next year.
All right, thank you. Councilman Spatafor.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's always a pleasure to have you here, Brett. I'm reading, just making sure I understand it properly. It's a 5-year renewal, so July 2026 through June 30th, 2031. Is that right?
Yeah, so the election would be next year, and then it would be assessed starting the following fiscal year.
Great. Thanks.
Vice President Hussein.
Yeah, so right now, in terms of 1 mil, what is that bringing in annually?
Right now, we're at, I want to say 3.2, 3.3. If I'm remembering correctly, I need to look back at that, but I can get that figure for you.
Yeah,
But
that'd be
it's somewhere, don't quote me on that,
Okay,
so,
I won't.
because
Yeah,
it's
but if
not
you can get us
budget
that,
time.
That'd be
but-
fantastic. That'd be fantastic. I guess I have a question. When we apply, your department, I think that you do a great job at applying for grants and things of that nature. Does having a millage that's supported by the community in place, does that help us score better?
Yeah, anytime you apply for grants, one of the things that any grant wants to see is grant match. And this allows us to have grant match, for instance, for grants from the county. It allows us the same thing for when we apply for the DNR trust fund grants, and being able to leverage other dollars against the millage is a key point whenever you're applying for grants.
Fantastic. And I think 2021, it would pass by like 70%.
It was the largest that we've ever seen.
Okay.
So it was 70, I want to say 75%, but I do know, the city of Lansing residents have supported this overwhelmingly, and we appreciate that. And this is a key part of our park system and a key part of our budget as well. And yes, there was overwhelming support of that, and we would like to see that continue.
Excellent. And just because we have him in the well, I know our Parks Master Plan is 2020 to 2025, right? So I would assume we're in the middle, maybe, of our planning process.
I wouldn't say the middle, we're at the beginning.
Very beginning.
So we have engaged Spicer Group for that. So 2025 will be a big year for us in terms of meeting with the public, in terms of surveys of the public to see what kind of things they're going to need and want to see in the parks for the next 5 years. So yes, our plan is up, and that is due then February 1st, 2026. We will be turning in our 5-year master plan.
Great.
Do we have any additional comments from council? All right, I very much appreciate you being here this evening. Thank you. With that, Vice President.
Sure. I would move the resolution pertaining to the ballot proposal for the Parks and Recreation millage renewal.
Okay, we have a proper motion in place. Any additional discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please state by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, moving down to our last agenda item. We have a resolution D, set a public hearing for a transformational brownfield plan number 87, New Vision Lansing. With that, I know we have Carl from EDC. I don't see Chris here. Oh, I do see Chris here. How you doing, Chris? Whoever wants to come down from the group, please do so. Paul and John Gentilossi, thanks for being here this evening. Make sure the green light's on and you guys can start presenting as soon as you are ready.
Good evening. I'm Carl Dorshimer with the Lansing EDC. And first of all, I would like to introduce you to the New Vision Lansing developer team. Next to me, we have John Gentilossi, and next to him is Paul Gentilossi of Gentilossi Real Estate in Lansing. And earlier this year, we, the group, we were here before council, and we introduced you to the New Vision Lansing concept and the idea of the projects, and a little bit of information about what a transformational brownfield plan is. So this brownfield plan, this $316 million 5-project development will help transform downtown Lansing. It will help transform downtown Lansing into a much more attractive place for residents, visitors, and workers. And we all know that downtown Lansing needs a significant boost right now. I mean, I walk downtown a couple times a day, and it's very quiet, and there's a lot of vacancies, and we really need a catalyst. We need some investment to bring people downtown, to bring back that vitality that we used to have. So these 5 projects that comprise this transformational brownfield plan, they will all be completed within 5 years. So it's a massive undertaking by the developer. And as I said, over $300 million worth of investment. And this will have a huge impact on the downtown. And this, along with some of the other developments that are planned, the Ovation, the 224, New City Hall, the old Greyhound bus station, maybe even the State Journal building, and other potential developments, the current City Hall building we're in here. I mean, if everything were to happen, downtown would be completely changed and thriving, in the next 5 to 10 years. And this would be one of the first steps toward that. So our request before you today at this committee and then council later tonight is to set a public hearing for this brownfield plan for December 2nd, the council meeting on the 2nd. And then we would come back on December 16th, which I believe is the last council meeting of the year. And at that meeting, we would ask for the council's consideration to approve the plan. So for now, I'll turn it over to both John and Paul, and what they will do is first present to you the updated projects, and they're pretty spectacular, and then talk a little bit about the need for the transformational brownfield plan, how it works, and how it makes all 5 of these projects make economic sense. So, Paul?
I'll let you, you're actually first up.
Oh, I am.
Yes, you are. I'll run the clicker.
John-
They've given us a lot of power here this evening.
I don't often get to talk first, so I'm going to be very brief. You want to scroll through the pages? A little bit, and I can't.
You're good, I got it.
Okay. This is some of our experience in the city. A little background, most of you know us. We've been here. My dad was here before me for 15 years, and I've been here 55 years, developing things downtown. These are a few of the projects that have been part of our history that we're proud of, and we think productive parts of the community. The next page is a development summary that talks about the total development costs of $316 million, the 601,000 square feet, 573 apartments, 766 parking spaces, workforce rent structure 150 units, and investment $253,700,000. Now, from when we first came to you, this is just a little over a 25% increase in the gross scope of the projects. That's happened. Since then, the Capitol Tower project got bigger. The tower on Grand got taller and bigger in gross square footage, and Old Town now has become a fact. So we're going to show you Old Town today, one of our projects, and we're also going to show you the Ottawa building it was originally the Board of Water and Light, built 100 years ago on Ottawa next to our Victor building, and what we think is a great and practical addition to the scope of our project. So some community economic benchmarks, you guys have these in front of you. You don't really need me to read them to you, but these are important things to our community. The fact that in the next 3 years, and our projects will be done in 40 months from now. They'll all be done and occupied. Some will be done a year from now, the Washington Square renovation. And one of the big concerns of council always is, when do we start? The Washington Square renovation has started. The bid packages for the foundation, the 47 50-foot deep caissons for the tower on Grand, that work goes out to bid the 1st of January, and demolition will take place on the existing building. We'll dig the hole, and construction will start a month or 6 weeks later. So if there's any questions about any of this, the real reward in my mind, there's a lot of big numbers here, but one thing we're really proud of is part of our process in the transformational brownfield will provide to the Lansing School District $217,000, or 207, forgive me, $207,000 on an annual basis to the retirement of their debt as a byproduct of our products. This is a bonus that comes through the state system that goes back directly. So in 10 years, it's over $2 million of debt retirement. In 20 years, it's over $4 million of debt retirement for the school district. So we all care. We went to Lansing schools. We want to support them. And the rest of the numbers are impressive on their surface, we think, and they're new and developing. So for the rest of the scope of the projects, I'm going to let the smart guy on our team talk.
Give this back to Carl then?
Yeah.
Good evening, members of the council. Thank you for having us here this evening. My name is John Gentilozzi. I'm the Vice President of Development for New Vision Lansing, and I'm here to walk you through the 5 projects that we're proposing as part of this transformational brownfield. We'll start first, obviously, with the wayfinding that we have, a map of downtown showing you where each individual project will be. Since we've seen you last, the expansion has occurred in the Old Town neighborhood, so we are proposing a vertical infill of a parking lot north of the building at 1223 Turner Street. That's the sunken parking lot that you see in that neighborhood. That will not only fill the hole, so to speak, but will also bring the apartments and the retail right to the street side so that we don't have a blockage, we don't have a hole in the north end of Old Town. The second project that we've added, you'll see in purple, the Ingham building is, as Paul said, 116 West Ottawa, former home of the Board of Water and Light and current home of the Michigan Prosecutors Association. Additionally, we have the yellow project, which is Washington Square, the green project, which is Tower on Grand, and of course the red project, which is Capitol Tower. We'll start. Okay. We'll start first with the Tower on Grand, of course, the most exciting project in the entire series. More than 300,000 square feet, 312 feet above the surface of Grand Avenue, making it likely the tallest building in Lansing once we're done. As you can see, it's again evolved a little bit since the last time you've seen it, and I expect that by the time we come back, we'll have new renderings again. And this is a moment to point out that since we received our approval from this body earlier in the year, we have not stopped working on the development of these projects, and most importantly, we haven't stopped working with Lansing firms to push them further. Both Hobbs & Black and Matrix Engineering, as well as PEA Group, are all based here in Lansing, and we felt it was important to bring those firms into this project. And even though they've never done a building of this type, they've responded fantastically. They've been open to learn and shown that they're a real asset in this market. The three pictures that you'll see here show the view of the tower as you would approach it from the north. The small inset picture shows the amenity deck that spans over Grand Avenue. It's the second layer in that spanning bridge. We move on to see the building from the south. You now get a bit more of a view of that amenity space. And on this side, we do a little bit of service function. We've got our loading docks. As you may imagine, 287 apartments yields a surprising amount of Amazon packages on a daily basis. So the flow through the building is very important to us. That gets things in and out easily. That would also be back toward where the Riverwalk is, which we'll show on another page. So you may imagine, or maybe not, that you have a lot of discussions about pools when you're working out apartment amenities. I've never owned a pool in my life, but I've talked more about pools in the last month than any human being should be required to do. Most importantly, the conclusion that we've come to is that if you're going to have a pool in Lansing, Michigan, it better be all year round. So we've made the step of moving the pool from the outside to the inside, creating some hot tub amenities on the deck. This allows the pool to be used year-round through any of the tenants of any 5 of these projects. That large wall that you see in front of the pool will open up on nice days so that we can bring the outside indoors. Obviously, a building of this magnitude requires some lighting. And so our lighting package that we're proposing is not just the white that you see in these renderings, but also a full color spectrum. So when and if the Spartans do win again, we can paint the building in green and white. When and if the University of Michigan decides to win again, we will continue to do nothing. However, I will say when Lansing Eastern does well, we will celebrate in blue and yellow, for sure. One thing...
What about Everett?
Red and white it is then, as well Sexton. We'll make sure that the Lansing schools are well represented in their success on this building. One of the things that I want to point out on this view, and I'm a little remiss for not bringing some better images of it, but at the bottom of the tower, just above that horizontal band of light, are 2 floors of units that we call live-work units. So one of the things that we recognize, especially being in downtown, is there are a lot of people who maintain an office downtown but may live somewhere else, whether it be Holt, DeWitt, East Lansing, someplace else like that. So as we looked at the market and perhaps what the market needed and talked to some folks, we came up with these live-work units. So you have an office, a living area, and maybe even 2 bedrooms within these units. And then you have a large, sometimes in the case of one of the units, 22 feet wide by 10-foot deep terrace overlooking the river so that you can entertain, you can bring people to our city, and sort of display this unique layout. I don't know that we've found another analogous version of these, so we're really excited about those. We've talked to people in the community, both businesses and individuals, who said, yes, if I can have my apartment and my office in the same place, it's going to bring me downtown, perhaps when I wouldn't have normally. Next, we see the view from Grand Avenue, again, looking slightly south, and there's a couple things that I want to point out here. To your left, and you'll just catch it in the left-hand side of the image, you see what opens up to a large open space. As you walk down that path, that will be the new connection to the river trail. As part of this project, we are cleaning, fortifying, and beautifying the river trail as it exists on that site. Currently, I'm not sure that any of you have been down there recently, but currently the state of the river trail there is not what we want people to see when they come to our city. So as part of our public infrastructure program and as part of the construction of the building, we'll be widening the river trail there, providing an outcropping for the public to view the river, and also making it convenient to get in and out and into downtown from the river trail. To the south of this project is the proposed bridge that we plan to work cooperatively with LEDC in the city to create a connection between Grand Avenue and the Orioles Museum and Impression 5 Museum on the other side of the river. We're also in negotiations with a tenant to bring a ground floor quick stop grocery, deli, and service concept to that area. So not only do we have the 287 units within that building, we also offer the street traffic from Grand Avenue and from the renewed City Hall and a lot of the other things that are going on in downtown Lansing. Please go ahead.
Just to note quickly, between the DHHS headquarters next door and the old State Police building, which is now DHHS, they propose to have more than 3,000 state employees in those two buildings. So if you add those to the 500 residents of our building, we have a great population to support the grocery store and the sandwich shop and the coffee shop, all of those service things that will be in our building on the ground floor. So I just wanted to digress a minute.
Thank you. So we move next into the lobby space, and here, as part of the podium space within this building, we accomplish some of those live-work functions. We provide some storage. We also provide the amenity level. So the indoor amenities, including the pool, will be supplemented by hot and cold plunge therapy pools, a golf simulator, and in a nod to our history, a racing simulator as well. Anyone who'd like to challenge the king, just leave me your name and we'll put together a little tournament. Anyway, as we looked at these amenities, we wanted to do things that were unique. We wanted to do things that would drive excitement within this market and drive excitement about this project. And as you can see, as soon as you walk in this building, hopefully we provide an environment that is new and unique to the city. Go ahead.
A couple other quick comments. If you want to wash your dog, we've got a spot. We got two spots. If you ride your bicycle every day and it's a $2,000 sophisticated carbon fiber frame, we have an isolated special rack for you. You can wash your bike and lock it into the rack. We need to be Chicago or New York. We have to do special things. If we don't make, and I hate to use this term, but if we don't make this project big time, we failed. And so we're putting everything in it that a big time project would have, because we got one chance to impress everybody who lives in and around Lansing about living downtown. So
I'll continue. Just checking. Okay, good. So this is another view of the amenity deck. We've leaned a little bit back from the pickleball. We were exclusively pickleball. We've brought back some basketball. We've brought back a multi-use space so that if it's the time for your kids to learn how to roller skate, there's a place to do it. If you need to settle a game of horse, there's a place to do it. But it also speaks towards some of the other amenities that we offer. You can see the dog walk area, the gathering spaces for grilling or having a gas-fueled fire, which is, that is, and I would take this moment right now to note, our negotiation currently with the Lansing Board of Water and Light will see this building as an all-electric building, save for those gas features on the crossover bridge. We won't be burning natural gas. We'll be using the hot and cold water loop provided by our local utility to heat and cool the building, and that will be far more energy efficient than any one action that we could take within the building on our own. And as the Lansing Board of Water and Light produces more green energy, our building is the direct recipient of that. We'll move on to the final slide for Tower on Grand, showing the expanded Riverwalk area. Again, moving that space out over the river, providing plenty of width for people to pass back and forth and really enjoy the Riverwalk.
It's 12 feet wide, the widest portion of the Riverwalk that exists. 2 feet wider than the minimum.
What is it currently right now?
10 feet. Well, there it's only 7 feet.
Currently on that site, it is asphalt backed up to concrete, and it's maybe anywhere between 7 and 70 feet, depending on how wide you want to stray. But we want to bring that into a cohesive, fully considered part of the river trail, so that when you enter downtown from the south, you have a presence, you have a feeling that you're in downtown. Next, we'll talk about Washington Square Apartments. First up, it is 66 units over 55,000 square feet, with 3,800 square feet of prime retail on the first floor, right at the corner of Washington and Michigan. I want to take a moment now to indicate that this building is meant to be workforce housing. 63. Yes, all, yeah. So all of these units will be in the Missing Middle program. And what that means, and we talk a little bit more about Missing Middle later, but Missing Middle says if you make between 80 and 120% of the area median income, then there is a rent structure set aside for you that is no more than 30% of your gross pay. And that 30% number comes up a lot in economic development. It comes up a lot in housing. That comes from HUD and the federal government and their studies that have said this is what people should pay for housing. So this program puts probably the most important group of workforce folks within the downtown environment, 1 block from the governor's office, a block and a half from the Capitol, which states our importance. How we view this program as part of our housing initiative downtown is incredibly important. As Paul said, we're committed to at least 150 units within that structure for the life of the project. To move on. Again, we're excited about this entire project. We'll go through some unit types on the next page. We vary the unit types because we do have an obstruction to the south of our building. I wouldn't call MSU-FCU an obstruction, but certainly it's hard to get a window in on that side, so we use some deeper units going into the more common floor plan above that. Capitol Tower is next. This is, pardon me. This will be on the corner of Ottawa and Walnut, directly to the northwest of the State Capitol building. That tall column that you see is sort of pointing right at the Capitol Dome. This project is revised a little bit from when we showed it last. It's had a reduction in office space, though we do still maintain a 24,000 square foot suite at the top for a tenant that specifically wants to be in that location. Below that will be 105 units of studio to 2-bedroom housing. It will contain a certain number of workforce rent structures. Each of our projects, except for the Ingham building, which is sort of too small to support it, will have a reasonable number of Missing Middle units contained within. Please do.
Yeah. One of the things, when we came to you the first time, we had a 10-story, 100,000 square foot building. After we got it all done, we liked it, but we felt it competed with the Capitol. So we came down and out in an attempt to make something that was attractive next to the Capitol, but didn't compete. The Capitol's the most important building in our city. So we wanted something architecturally important. We wanted something also that was great to live in. So we needed more balconies, we needed more common space for all the residents, and we needed all indoor parking. I didn't want to park any cars exposed on the site. So all of our parking is indoor. And the first 2 levels are parking on the west side, and on the north side, 1 level. Because we just didn't want it to look like a parking lot. We wanted it to be important architectural buildings don't show cars. So we don't show cars.
we'll move on to, I think, one of the neatest features of this building. On this side, on this facing street, we're about 15 feet deep with these balconies, and in some cases 20 feet wide. So there's a lot of space. I think we actually show dining tables out there. So in terms of entertaining and showing people kind of how beautiful our city is, this offers a great opportunity. And even the slightly shallower balconies on the north-south side are still fantastic views of the Capitol, and a great place to be.
Now, they're 400 square feet. They allow for a lot of green things, trees and shrubs and bushes, and it is the premium view of our Capitol and downtown.
As we look further, move up the building a little bit, a couple things we want to point out here. We've been very key in bringing a lot of natural light into these spaces, bringing large openings, big windows into these spaces so that it really does feel like an expansive unit indoors. Also, we provide that office tenant with some outdoor entertaining spaces so they can do the things that they need to do within Lansing. And it's certainly, I think, one of the most impressive views that you're going to find in our city, especially standing outside. We do have a pool and amenity space. This is currently showing the pool outdoors. As we work through the engineering on the tower on Grand Pool, we expect to bring that indoors and work the same 12 months of the year, because certainly if you need to swim to exercise, it's a little chilly in January. So we wanted to bring that same feel to this project as well as the other projects. Now to Old Town. And the first thing I'd say about the Old Town model that we're presenting here is that Old Town will very much follow along in the direction of Capitol Tower. So as we work to finalize the Capitol Tower architecture, the evolution of that will then be applied to Old Town. So a couple of notes on this. We're 90 units here. We, again, are 2 stories of parking, the existing lower layer, a street level layer, and then 5 levels of apartments above that. And so where you see signage on that model is also a 1,500 square foot retail space, so that we could, again, bring that retail back to the street front and just have a little bit more of Old Town as it extends to the north. We show kind of a perspective layout here. The building is L-shaped, and what we don't show in this case is that in the corner of that L will again be an amenity deck. And that amenity deck is going to be, I think, above the Riverwalk about 20 feet, give or take. So your view from the pool, your view from the community space on that deck will be of the river, kind of looking southwest back toward downtown and back into Lansing. Last, but certainly not least, is the Ingham Building. Ingham Building will be 25 studio and 1-bedroom apartments, furnished, focused a lot on legislative staff, legislators that may be from out of town, but it gives a reuse of that building, which as an office building probably didn't have a ton of future. There really wasn't a dying need for a 6-story office building in that format. So the apartment format not only tucks some residential into what is otherwise a sort of commercial area, but also puts residential right next to the house office building, near Hobnob, so there's places to go, there's a place to get a coffee in the morning. But it offers something that we don't have a lot of in this market: smaller format, furnished apartments for people who may not be living there all the time or may just be starting out and require a smaller apartment.
A couple other things that will be part of the Ingham Building renovation. On the ground floor, we're building a gathering space for legislators and staff. And we're building isolated call rooms. One of the things you may know, I don't know what the rules are for city council, but legislators can't make calls requesting support from their offices or from the Capitol building, anywhere on a state-owned property. So they're forced 2-3 times a week to go for a couple hours to their lobbyist or their law firm. We're gonna build that in the apartment building so that they can have a space directly adjacent to their office where they can go and reserve this little room, and we'll build a half a dozen of them, and they'll be able to make their calls, soliciting contributions, whatever legislators do. They'll have the privacy to do that. And then there's a 2,000 foot common area that will be a place for both sides of the aisle to gather. And as we first had this concept, I went to both sides. you never know who's going to be in the majority. So we went to both sides equally and said, this is our idea. What do you think? Universally, they love the idea. And I think it can set a precedent for more and more of these kinds of service apartment buildings to be available to legislators and staff. They didn't work, at least currently they don't work as missing middle because of the cap at the 120% of median income. The salary that House members get is $2,000 over the cap. So staff members can live there under missing middle, but legislators cannot. So, go ahead.
So this brings us back to the nature of the transformational brownfield and the reasoning behind it. What is it that we need to provide all of these great things to the city? And I'll let you
All right.
start on part of this.
Why do we need help? Why are we here asking for a TIF district, brownfield from the city, and transformational brownfield from the state of Michigan? The fundamental economic reasons are pretty basic. Construction on our tower on Grand is $450 a square foot. Construction for the Capitol Tower is $400 a square foot. Now, those are all numbers that we hear. The city's building its own buildings, and they've found that that's the same cost for you to build your public buildings, your new building on South Washington and your new city hall. The problem with making income-based buildings, apartment buildings or office building, is we have a $250 a square foot market. So from the get-go, you have a $150 a square foot deficit. That means if you use just conventional financing, you can't build them. No matter how much equity you put in, you can't build it because you can't pay for it. So what brownfield does, and again, I know the council knows this, for every $100 of local taxes we pay, the city keeps 13, which is still more than they're getting now on all of our projects, and we get reimbursed net of fees 87% of that, or $87. So after we pay the LEDC and all the other permits and stuff, we get about 85 out of every 100 that we pay. So it's paying us back with the tax dollars that we're generating. The other format would be to say, well, let's just give you a great big tax abatement and you don't pay the taxes. That gives you enough money reward to not need our brownfield. The problem with that is that transformational brownfields, where the state allows us to do recoveries to fill this gap, and it's a very well audited gap, we lose if we do just a tax abatement. So we're happy to do this. The city gets, in this case, our building permit fees on just the tower on Grand are $1,200,000. Our fees to Carl, he's gonna have a new suit, but are about $3.2 million. So we give back with a lot of fees and a lot of increases in income to the city in net taxes. And that's how we're filling the gap between a rent structure based on $250 a square foot and a cost based on over $400 a square foot.
Can I cover the next slide? It's my favorite.
Yes, you can. Don't have kids.
So the next slide is, it's one of my favorite slides because of what it shows. I don't know that it's everyone's favorite, but when you look at this map, the parcels that you see blacked out do not contribute any property tax dollars to the city of Lansing. And that's because they're either a governmental entity, whether it be the cities, the states, or the federal government, could be a county entity, it could be a nonprofit, it could be anything. And let me be the first to say that we're not saying that these things are bad. We're not saying that parks, shouldn't exist because they take up land that could otherwise be developed. That's not it at all. What we're trying to enforce here is that the development environment in Lansing is probably different than most other municipalities, and certainly other municipalities within Michigan. So we took the 702 acres that you see in the Downtown Neighborhood Association, which was an easily divisible size for us, and we went to Grand Rapids, Detroit, and Traverse City. And we said, how many $5 million assessed parcels are there within 702 acres in those places? Lansing, Michigan has 12. Detroit has, and please don't quote me on this, about 49. The city of Traverse City has somewhere in the mid-50s. The point being, we don't see the type of development that we see in other places. We don't see the type of high-value property tax producing developments that we see in other places. And the way to start that is to give new entrants into this market some help, some cover. We are that cover. We're the ones bringing 570 units into downtown Lansing and the adjacent areas so that people will know someone is here. When our apartments are full, it gives other people the push that they need, the stability that they need to say, I can open a business down here. I can invest money down here. I can bring my company here and know that I'm providing good housing options in a quality city. And we've known that about Lansing for a really long time. And one thing that this map did for us was said, you're not going to get the same sort of organic neighborhood development that you see in other places. When there is a sea of parking lots or a sea of land between two neighborhoods, those two neighborhoods aren't going to connect. So we have to create the connection. We have to create those conduits within the part of the city that we can. If people down the road feel that these non-tax paying parcels would be better served in the city's inventory or in the private inventory, they can do that. But we make the point here that the development environment in Lansing is different, and the development environment in Lansing, and especially from your standpoint, needs some help. And we need to get more people able to do projects down here, and this helps that.
I'd like to comment just briefly. You know, we like our competitors. In particular, I'm going to brag a little bit about Pat Gillespie and his brother, who have done a ton at bringing residential near downtown. But I said to Pat a couple years ago, why don't you have any apartments downtown? He goes, oh, I'm scared as hell. I'm not sure people will come. So Pat set the precedent. He's got people living a few blocks away next to the stadium. He's got people up and down Michigan Avenue, and he's made it a success. That gave us the confidence to take the risk on the other side of the river. But as we look at this side of the river, it's the reason we paid $2 million for a little parking lot south of a parking ramp on Grand Avenue. Now that was a record per square foot for land sales. That's why we have to build a 27-story building with 300 apartments in it to justify the cost of that land. Had to be on the river. If we look up and down the river, you guys own most of it. You guys own most of the river frontage as parks and other buildings as part of the community. Michigan Accident Fund owns a bunch of it. The Civic Center, the Lansing Center owns a bunch of it. None of that can be developed. So we've made this decision based on an acre of land in downtown as the major point of our risk, because we believe it. 50 years we built office buildings downtown, and we did okay until COVID. So now that's not coming back. We're never going to be 11,000, 12,000 people on a Monday downtown Lansing. What we got to do is build as many multifamily units as we can, which will then foster restaurants for the people who may not work downtown, but can work downtown. For the new teachers that come to our community, for the people who work for the state, when they actually come back to work downtown. I'm sorry to pontificate here. This is the biggest risk. I'm a guy who spent his life taking risk, and this is the biggest risk of our lives. I'm risking for my grandkids because we believe in it, and we've shown that we believe in it for a long time, and that's why we're sitting here before you.
I'll finish off with just a couple of additional points. Promise there's only 2 slides left. This gives just some of the details if you're unfamiliar with how transformational brownfield plans are put together or how they work. This talks about the revenues that are captured and talks about some of the features of transformational brownfield plans. And the final slide that we have makes this point. we have within and around downtown Lansing some fantastic organizations, and we single out a few of them. U of M Sparrow, Neogen, General Motors, Michigan State, Auto Owners Insurance, Jackson National Life. These are all fantastic companies who are based here in Lansing. And when we talk to these people, one of the things, and specifically a lot of the folks that we've talked to at the hospital will say, it's hard to find new people housing. It's hard to find housing that is attainable, that they can get to. And we're not just talking about doctors, we're talking about all of the staff, nurses, technicians, anyone who's just starting their first job within that hospital system, finding them a place to live that is competitive with their other options. Because let's be clear, people who come to work in Lansing may have had a job offer in Grand Rapids, in Detroit, Traverse City, Chicago. These things that we're doing is one of the things that's going to get people to pick Lansing. And when the people pick Lansing, the companies pick Lansing. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that well-informed presentation from you guys. Do we have any comments or questions from council? Councilman Spatafor?
Folks, thanks for being back here. Appreciate the changes and the explanation. I've got a few questions, if my colleagues will indulge. So you said you started on this project already, the Washington Square piece?
We've started certain demolition activities that we can do prior to brownfield approval.
Great. That's a good answer. Mr. Dorshemer highlighted how dead downtown appears sometimes. When can we see coming soon signs?
If I could.
Please do.
Councilman, in a week, you're going to see the properties we own in the 200 block of South Washington decorated with all the coming soon stuff for all of these projects.
Great.
So we
I think it's important to talk about those things being presumptuous. And we didn't put them up in a lot of ways because we didn't want, until we had come and spoken to this body about the projects, we didn't want to presume that they were going to be approved. We feel a lot better having been here today that we start to put them
in the progress of what we're doing, there's a lot of hurdles.
Sure.
And it's hard as a developer to risk your reputation until you're sure that everybody is helping you float your boat. And so we have this 90-day look-back thing with the MSF, and that meeting got pushed from late December to early January. And then 90 days, anything we did before that wasn't an allowable expense. So we kind of got stuck in that no man's land. So we did the demolition. We've ordered, in the case of the Washington Square, the first building that will have occupancy in the fall of '25. We had to be sure that we didn't embarrass ourselves.
Sure, no, I understand. I
So-
think it's great, this is coming, but I do think showing some sort of progress like that is exciting for
Absolutely.
downtown, and I'm glad to see that, you said
Yeah,
that next week?
Yes, yeah, it goes up. Foresight company is doing it, and they've had everything done. And the other thing was, we've changed the look a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. We meet twice a week with our architects and builders, and those meetings are 6-8 hours. And because we have an open platform, we keep coming up with new ideas.
Great. I've got a couple more questions yet.
Sure.
Little heavier than the other one. I see about $15 million in brownfield eligible public
No.
improvements.
Public improvements, yes.
Public improvements, yes.
Could you explain what those are? I heard a bridge and the Riverwalk improvements. What else?
Well, the overall, that's maybe better a Carl question.
Sure. Carl's here.
So the 15 million is for riverfront improvements between Shiawassee Street and Kalamazoo on both sides of the river, including the proposed pedway that goes across. We hope to be able to use those funds to help leverage additional funding from some of the stakeholders along that, property owners that were spoken of earlier, and then also work with the Gentilosi's to find a way to help finance and gather a pool of money and be able to really make a big difference. We really would love to have some major lighting, fix up the river trail, and really have that as a focal point. Because if you look at the way downtown has evolved, and you talked about past Pat Gillespie's projects, really it goes all the way to like Large Street, and then it goes all the way to Capitol, and then on the north side is Shiawassee, and then Kalamazoo, and the river runs smack dab right through the middle of it. So from a planning standpoint, to have that the focal point and really spend a lot of money to make that very attractive, so that when people come downtown, they hang out down there, they go back and forth, and they really access and utilize the whole downtown, including the new part on the east side.
So I'm hearing $15 million in mostly riverfront improvements. Is that what you're saying, Carl?
Yeah, public infrastructure improvements as defined by the Brownfield. So it's to be determined. I was talking with Brett Kaczynski just earlier. Once the plan's approved, and we will put together a working group and come up with some plans and some ideas, and then use it to try and leverage additional money, and then go forth and start to do those projects.
So you're hoping to use this as a force multiplier then on
Pardon
public
me?
improvement? Hoping to use this as a force multiplier on public improvements. What we'll
Right.
probably see from the project is sort of the baseline.
That's correct.
Okay, cool. How is the public improvement being financed? Is that being done, is the developer paying for that?
Well, it's a combination of us. I'll just speak up. So, if you looked at everything we're doing that's classified as Riverwalk, that's about $3 million of our dollars. We've promised a contribution to the bridge that's being built on the Grand Tower land connecting, which is a little more than half the cost of that bridge. The Board of Water and Light's going to participate. The city's going to participate, depending on the final scope of what we bring over the river. The board's participating because they're going to bring water from their water processing plant and electricity back that way. So the Riverwalk construction that we're doing is almost $3 million of our dollars, in addition to the gifts we're giving the city. The last time the Grand Avenue Riverwalk and frontage down to the river was improved was when I spent $1.8 million when I built the Grand Tower. And I would note that then it was a different structure because the TIF Brownfield thing was different. We gave the city a check for $1 million to begin the construction of the Riverwalk. Now, that was $1989, which was when it was really $1 million. So we staked the first investment, and we believe that our investments and the quality with which we're building the Riverwalk above and beyond the standard expectation will show everybody else how to do theirs. So I don't know if I've answered your question. We're just bidding our Riverwalk, so we didn't include that. And it's not our Riverwalk, it's on an easement for the city. And it'll be 15 feet wide from Grand Avenue to the Riverwalk, and then 12 feet with an the whole length of it, an overlook, so you'll stand almost at the edge of the river looking down.
Sure.
One other important thing is we've committed to secure that area under, if you read the paper a few months ago, the problem of people living under the Grand Tower, City of Lansing owned Riverwalk and River View was significant. That is a very unfortunate blight on our city. And if you haven't seen it from the Arioles Museum or Impression 5 side, it's embarrassing. Now, it's tough for the Public Service Department or the Parks Department just to say, I need an extra $500,000 or $700,000 to make sure that homeless people can't live there. And I'm not picking on homeless people. It's just a fact that that riverbank is a dangerous, inappropriate spot that can't be policed.
So I heard out of the 15 million, we've identified 3 million. Where's the other 12 million coming
No.
from?
We're building $3 million of construction. We're donating $1 million, $750 plus another $250 to safety the area outside of our property, on your property.
So where's the additional?
The $15 million, sir, if I may.
Yeah, please do.
Is your question, what is the source of the $15 million?
Yes.
Okay. That is money retained by the LBRA, is that the correct organization? That money is taken from the tax payments that we make every year and accumulated. And it's as guaranteed as us paying the property tax. It's just like any other TVP benefit. That money can be leveraged later on, that stream of income, and I'm not here to tell the city what to do with its money, but that stream of income can be sold for a present value so that money can be spent on these projects. But overall, what we're trying to accomplish there is to bring together people who have a common interest in downtown, to leverage this money in the long term, our money in the short term, to provide space and funding for new projects to take place as part of the Riverwalk.
Carl, I have a question for you then. Have there been other brownfields where public improvements were part of their function? And if so, who financed those?
There have been. Typically, it's the developer that finances them, though they've been much smaller than 15 million. Typically, it's like 500,000 in that range, a couple 100,000.
Okay. Quick thought on parking real quick, if my friends will still allow me to keep talking. Thank you. You're proposing a 25% increase in the amount of parking spaces just according to our vacant parking spaces in the city of Lansing. I recognize some of them are essential, i.e. the 88 spaces in Old Town. There's not parking down in Old Town. Lansing was awarded the Golden Crater Award. Your building structures sometimes at about 75% vacant parking ramps in the city. Was there any discussion about using existing parking to meet some of the demand that you'll create? I'm supportive of your project. I don't want you to take my questions as anything but 766 spaces, 1.3-ish per housing unit in spaces where people probably might have parking if they work downtown, particularly Ingham, all this other stuff near a lot of spaces. Can we talk about using city resources? I heard our EDP director talk about how our vacant parking is an economic development tool. Not so in this case. So explain to me why.
All right. Parking is not a vague science. People in the Midwest, people in Lansing, will go to if you go to any of Pat Gillespie's apartments up and down Michigan Avenue, it's as close to downtown as we can get. There's 1.5 parking spots on site for every apartment that he has. We have less than 1.5 parking spots for every unit, or in the case of office space, 4 parking spots per 1,000. We are not within 300 feet in any of our jobs of a city-owned parking lot. So the question is, in January, when it's 8 degrees outside and you get home from work with 3 bags of groceries, are you going to wish you parked at Pat's building where you walk 50 feet to your apartment, or do you want to walk 100 yards? I can say that we'd rather not build parking, but what I'd rather do is not build apartments that people won't live in. So all of the science for everything we've looked at, and we've looked at more than $5 billion worth of multifamily all over the Midwest, from Chicago to Detroit to Cleveland to Columbus, all the way down to Cincinnati. In every case, parking has been the determinant variable in whether people will live there. If I had a piece of land next to the North Grand Ramp, I wouldn't build 1 parking spot. So the real issue, we don't make any money off parking. We lose money on parking, but we lose even more money on a vacant apartment building. So that, I don't mean to be coy. It's just a fact of life.
It's a little incongruent with the statement of we should be Chicago, but I don't disagree with some of the assessments.
I would also mention that, for 287 apartments, we're currently scheduled for 314 parking spaces. the ramp that is to the north of us, the privately held ramp to the north of us, I will note, doesn't always fit everyone's car. Certain pickups are iffy to get in and out of there. A large van may also be iffy. To the positive side of our contribution to parking, we expect about $750,000 to be paid by our contractors to park in city-owned lots during the construction of our project. So we will be bringing, it's maybe $250,000 a year on an average basis for the next 3 years to the city parking inventory. But I think also to your question, the parking has to be in the right place.
Thank you. I appreciate the answers. I'm concerned about the race to the bottom for city parking ramps. We're debating parking fees right now because our system is having trouble keeping up with all the vacancies, and we're about to see an influx of 25% more parking spaces for competition for those spaces, particularly in the commercial tenant space.
Nothing we're building is new for the public. Everything we're building is for the residents. The other major concern
There's
is
nothing for the commercial residents, commercial tenants either?
we're only building a limited amount of office space.
Okay.
And in this case, it's at the Capitol Tower. And it's because there isn't any public parking available down there. But something really important, if you're gonna move yourself and your family downtown, what's one of your largest concerns? What we've found as the largest concerns is safety, public safety. So when people come to one of our apartment buildings to rent, they're gonna be in our ramp because it's gonna have every 50 feet a camera system tied to a 24/7 security guard. They're gonna know that it's a gated ramp and only people who live there can get in and out of the areas where they park. So if your significant other comes with 2 bags of groceries at 10 o'clock at night, they're not gonna walk in a public facility that has no security to your apartment.
Okay. Next question, Carl. This one's probably better answered by you. So we've got $316.7 million total project cost, $63 million in straight up state and it's our $40 million grant and the other grant. How much tax capture is going back over the life of the brownfield?
There's different types of tax capture, but if you look at the traditional tax capture, which is just property taxes, it's around, I believe, 88 million is going to the developer, but the total amount is roughly double that because it's state taxes that are state income taxes, state sales taxes, and other state taxes. So from that standpoint, one of the advantages of this is there's a lot of reimbursement from taxes, but most of those taxes are state taxes. So the proportion that the state, essentially contributes to it is quite high relative to a normal plan. Usually it's around a 40-60 split.
So it looks like, I think John's got my answer.
No, sir, I do not necessarily have your exact answer. I was providing Carl, if I obviously keep with me a fair number of these tables. I was providing Carl if he could find the piece that he needed.
What's the total amount of brownfield eligible activity that's coming back? I think you know the answer. The question I'm asking is, how much money is being reimbursed for this project? Total, over the life of the project.
From the city.
From the entire
The entirety of
the entire
brown-
governmental apparatus.
The entirety of the Act 381 brownfield is we're able to capture $88 million approximately, of which that is the limit based on the increment that we're creating. We will have a further $30 million that will go unreimbursed within our eligible expenses because we don't create a large enough increment to capture them. So some of our eligible expenses at the end of this project will be unreimbursed.
Great. I think that answers my litany of questions.
All right, thank you. Do we have
Thank
any
you.
additional
Thank
comments
you.
or questions from council? Councilman Jackson.
Thank you. I'll try to keep my litany short if you promise to keep your answers short.
I can't promise it.
Okay, for Carl, can you just go over the negotiations that happened, if any, when it comes for, or this might go to the city, but how does the city benefit in the negotiations that happened?
Which type of negotiations?
Just the total, so the life is 30 years.
Right.
Can that be shortened?
They're asking for 30 because it takes that and more to reimburse all of their eligible activities. But the majority of the reimbursement, including those extra state sources, they end at 20. So it drops dramatically. So that last 10 years is quite a bit smaller. But the 30 years is basically the maximum that you can ask for, and hence that's what the developer is asking for.
And that was kind of my question, is like, what does the city do to try to work it out in the best interest? Just because we showed that blackout video or picture, I mean, with all the different brownfields and arguably pilots and stuff, that property is basically blacked out for a certain amount of time. So don't we want to get it on the full?
We do have a certain amount that, you know, is going to the Brownfield Authority for the infrastructure, the 15 million, and that's carved out of what would have gone to the developer. But I agree with you, a shorter plan is better from the standpoint of once the plan expires, then it all goes to the taxing units. On rare instances in very large projects like Red Cedar and this particular project, you know, it's necessary to go 30 years. So that's what's been asked for by the developer, and that's what makes the numbers work for them too.
So that kind of answers that one, I'm sorry.
Well, if I may, though, there is, I can actually offer some further context. Throughout the life of our plan, the LBRA, Lansing Brownfield Authority, will receive $186,000 per year to fund their operations, or $3.75 million total. Again, they're allowed to collect not only the $15 million allocation for public infrastructure, but also the $9 million of interest that would come with that, further expanding that amount of money. Additionally, with these units downtown, our estimate is that the city will see at least $750,000 of increase in income taxes due to the city per year.
Thank you. I guess I just want to just make sure that, you know, there is an interest that the city is trying to get the best, and that you guys aren't just getting developers, you guys are just getting what you want because everybody likes you and you guys do good jobs. Because, you know, otherwise...
I can assure you, sir, the city is advocating on the city's behalf quite effectively.
Okay, thank you. And then the next kind of area, when we talk about the forgotten middle and workforce development, that's great and fine and all. You said you're doing a HUD program, which is great and fine, you know, 150 units out of 287. But what about a couple units for the people that are like Section 8? Can you guys work with and obtain vouchers for people who would qualify, at least somewhere, anywhere in all of this whole downtown project?
There isn't a program available that we qualify for.
So like, because it's an apartment building, I mean, why, people do Section 8, you can't get a Section 8
So
if you have a tenant that
because
applies?
if you're building 221D4 units, the MISTA, if you look at 40 to 60% of income, if you look at Capital Commons 2, what's rent in Capital Commons 2? $500. The differential between $500 and $1,200, because of the cost of the project, is too great.
Sure. So I'm sorry. I do mean to cut you off, but not for any malice.
I know,
Just
I
for
understand.
time and stuff. So I just want to say, are you saying it's legally not possible, or it's not possible because your project, which includes some things like a cold tub, plunge,
Yeah.
you know, some really nice things in there, is it because the cost of that project's too high, or because it's legally not possible to get a couple, like 2 or 1 out of the 287 units for someone who would apply for Section 8?
If there's a program available, so being in a Section 8 housing unit is extremely complex. It's not just, let me take a unit out of this building and HUD and MISTA are going to sanction it. It's a significant process. That's why there are 300 units of 40 to 60% income at Capital Commons 1 and 2, because it was built specifically for that purpose.
Sure. And I was just saying, before the cranes go up, if it's possible to look and at least say why you can't do it legally, it would help with my conscience.
Okay.
Because, you know, you did point out correctly, have you seen the people, not Blight, under the building that don't have a house by the river trail?
Yep.
Those people are having a way harder time than everybody that's looking at them. I'm just saying.
I agree.
So I'm not saying those people would be able to have Section 8, even though I'm sure some of them are waiting for a voucher. But my understanding of how it works is the person applies to the landlord and says, I have a voucher, and then after there's an agreement, the landlord then goes and makes sure that their building is okay. But I just want to put that out there. And I would also agree that the Riverwalk won't be much of anything as a connection unless there's that bridge there, because you would have to go over the Kalamazoo Bridge and then kind of walk down the area where it's not necessarily good for just pedestrian traffic.
We're trying to limit steps. Right now, there are too many steps in our Riverwalk. So we're trying to give access in the central business district with no steps, so that people, handicapped access, universal access to everybody downtown is the same.
Okay. Well, thank you. So I would at least look next time at the public hearing just for what you have to say about
Sure.
legally possible.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any additional questions or comments from council? Seeing none, I just got one real quick one. In the notes that was provided to council, it says Old Town. I thought you mentioned 90 units. In here, it says 80 units.
So those drawings that you have,
As I said, we're modifying,
Oh,
we're
yeah,
moving,
yeah.
we're trying to move at a pace that is suitable, but we believe we can get to 90 there.
Okay.
No less than 80, but we think we can get to 90.
And you said Washington Square, fall of 2025. When do you anticipate the tower on Grand coming online?
so the construction period is estimated to be 30 months.
Okay.
So
24 if you ask us, 30 is Christmas.
if
Day.
you ask Christmas, yeah. So we're somewhere, you know, when we built the Grand Tower, same size building, we're really proud that we built that and occupied it in 1 year. The difference in the additional year here is $9 million of construction interest. So we're induced to do as much overtime as possible and go as fast as possible. We'll know more in 60 days when we get the first bids. The structural shell for the tower on Grand is a $35 million contract. So we'll know more. We're using post-tension, and it looks like Crispin's telling us 2 weeks of floor. We'd much rather have 9 or 10 days per floor. So.
Vice President Hussein.
Yeah, just one quick question. I'm trying to wrap my mind around the timeline. You guys had sent a proposed timeline to us. My understanding, out of 87 brownfields that we've vetted, obviously this is the first transformational brownfield plan. And so in any event, my understanding was that you needed termination of support from the MEDC. Then you needed local government approval, and then you have to go before the MSF. I thought that meeting was on the 10th. Is that?
The meeting was, and I'll just be point blank.
Right.
The meeting with the Michigan Strategic Fund was scheduled for the day after the last council vote. It was the week after the council vote. The MEDC, so it's no secret, I was on that board for 5.5 years.
Right.
I've been gone 2 years. But because our consultant, Steve Arwood, used to be the director 5-6 years ago, and I was on that board, they wanted an independent outside financial review by the Anderson Company to make sure nobody could question the results. So they came to us 5-6 weeks ago and said, we want to do an outside opinion. The law is anything over $100 million requires an outside opinion. We're below that threshold, but we think that it's fair. So we agreed to take all conflict of interest out of it. That cost us a month. That's why the change in schedule.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any additional questions or comments from council? Seeing none. Thanks for being here this evening. Look forward to seeing you. With that, Vice President Hussein.
Yep, so I would move the resolution, and this is to set a public hearing for December 2nd, and then that would set us up for potential final consideration on the 16th. Thank you.
Okay, we have a proper motion in place. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please state by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Okay, see no further business. We are adjourned. We'll see you back.
Mr. President?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would you like us to be at the council meeting tonight?
Yeah, if you're able to be here for any additional questions, that'd be great.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, no further business. We're adjourned.